Greetings, everybody. It's February the 1st, 2025. This is the first of my regularly scheduled videos that I'm going to be releasing at 4:30 every Saturday for the foreseeable future. These are generally going to be about news, and this one is going to cover the first 2 weeks of the Jones administration, which is, and it's the Trump administration, but I know a lot of people don't want to hear it. In any case, Jones, by the way, is Jim Jones. That's what I'm referring to. He is, I've described him before as a leader of a cult that is not good for his supporters. It's not healthy for them. Anyway, so we're going to be covering the first 2 weeks, and just about, because it's been about 2 weeks now, and it'll be in 2 days. So what have we seen? A lot of noise. Elon Musk, the main backer of his campaign, someone that he is giving a residence at the White House to, and all of these titles that may or may not mean something because he doesn't want him to have to divest himself. Elon Musk has been credibly has been seen on camera doing a Nazi salute at the inauguration. There's a bunch of other things. His crazy press conference where he blamed the crash that happened that was likely caused by his administrative policies, firing large swaths of the upper management of the federal government within a matter of days. That is the likely cause of that, but blaming it on diversity policies and anything to get the blame off of himself and onto somebody else. There was a wave of executive orders that he did, most of which are unconstitutional and have been blocked in the courts. And again, if it's blocked in the courts, that means that the courts are working. That's old news. We knew that he was going to try to do things that are lawless. But the main reason why I'm bringing up all of these things that I think are a waste of time, I'm not going to. I will mention them in passing in future videos if I think that something is a waste of time. The reason why I'm bringing them up at all is to make a point about the news cycle. The 24-hour news cycle, it is not fit for a moment like this. And frankly, it's the greatest gift that has been given to this man. It's the main reason why I think that we are in a moment, if we actually collapse into a totalitarian moment where people are abducted and all kinds of stuff. I'm not going to, you know what totalitarianism is. There's no reason for me to describe it further. A lot of you are afraid of it right now. I am. I'm not going to stop speaking, though. The news cycle, the 24-hour news cycle, is probably going to be one of the main reasons why we got into a totalitarian moment, if we get there. And so, and the reason why is because the nominations, I believe, are what really matters, as I will eventually describe. Trump himself is very weak and doesn't really have the capacity at this point to misbehave or act in a dictatorial way, in an organized way, to be able to establish totalitarianism. But if he has a bunch of people that can manage it for him, and that can do the coups and the purges and the constitutional violations and break the separation of powers for him, then the chances go up substantially. And so I think that the nominees matter a lot more than the executive orders, because if the nominees are or were blocked, then the executive orders were, as they are right now, will be meaningless. They'd be meaningless if those nominees were not able to break the rule of law. But if they do, then those executive orders might have some meaning. So far, every single one of Trump's nominees that have gone up before a vote so far, not counting Matt Gaetz that withdrew himself, but every single one of them has succeeded so far, including Pete Hegseth, who I've been warning about for a long time. But by the time I made my first video on Wednesday, he had already passed Senate confirmation and become the Secretary of Defense. I don't consider him as dangerous as Kash Patel, but the rumor mill so far, in any case, the rumor mill so far has indicated that Kash Patel is more likely than nominees like RFK and Tulsi Gabbard to make it through, which is very disturbing to me, that the two nominees that have control over the more arms than any other government organization, than probably every other organization, not counting the DOJ, which includes the FBI, than any other possibly all of them combined, the organizations that have more arms than possibly the entire rest of the federal government are under the control of, or at least could be, are more likely to be under the control of Trump's picks than any of the other organizations in the government. And that is very concerning. One thing about Pete Hegseth, though, and Pete Hegseth does have a drinking problem and other things that make him incompetent, and that might help. That might be good for us in a scenario where he tries to use the military or parts of the military to create a secret police force, for instance. But there's another element to that as well, which is that he uses the Democrats that have been attacking him on his personal record more than just about anything else. I never heard at one point during the entire confirmation hearing that I heard any Democrats discussing the words that he wrote in any of his books, the ideological position he comes from, which could make him more likely to engage in something like a coup or purges unlawfully against the speech and debate clause or the First Amendment. That was hardly mentioned at all in any of the Democratic criticism of Pete Hegseth at the confirmation hearings. And because of that, and in spite of that, in spite of the relatively weak criticism of Pete Hegseth, again, it was and is a danger to the rule of law and to the ability of us to have a civil society and to not be totalitarian and to have elections in the future. That is how dangerous Pete Hegseth is. if in spite of the weak criticism by Democrats, if one Senate race had gone differently, say the race with Tester in Montana, if one Senate race had gone differently, he would have not passed. He would have lost by 49 to 51, and J.D. Vance would not have been able to bail him out. And he would have, and Trump would have been forced to select someone else. And by the way, as an aside, I could fucking whack DeSantis with a wet noodle. In early December, he was being considered for that job, and I would have been his greatest backer. And and he's a ghoul, by the way. I have no respect for Ron DeSantis in a lot of ways. I would have been his greatest backer for Secretary of Defense because he has led a state and he did not implement totalitarianism. Like, for everything you can say about Ron DeSantis, he is not Huey Long. He was not able to establish a totalitarian government in Florida. And I would much rather have someone with a proven record like Ron DeSantis in charge of my military than someone like Pete Hegseth that has these ideological problems. But in any case, he almost lost. One Republican voting differently or one Senate race that went differently would have knocked him over. So, what that means, in my view, about Patel, Patel might be one of our closest ones, but the things that go against him are much more direct, and Democrats have directly criticized them, are much more directly visible in those hearings than they were for Pete Hegseth. And so I would not be surprised if one more Republican turned against him in his vote than against Hegseth. So not all hope is lost, but still, it is disturbing to me that the most dangerous people, even to the functioning of the separation of powers and the ability of the Senate to exist and to debate and speak without fear of purging or other kinds of interference from the executive, it is concerning that those people are the ones that have the best chance of going through. So, when it comes to RFK, a lot of people have... he is a danger to the health of Americans. He could unleash a pandemic on us. We're already pretty close to a pandemic right now with the bird flu. RFK could certainly tip us over the edge. He would not provide the same services to us that previous HHS secretaries have if there was a pandemic. And he has a lesser chance of getting through, which, I don't know, maybe the Senate is selfless or something. I think that the Republican Senate are just a bunch of deer in the headlights. But they're able to see it. The pedestrian damage that RFK could do in terms of leading to the deaths of people randomly, stochastically, because of a pandemic, instead of the totalitarian damage that people that control weapons could do. It is comforting to some degree that the Senate, at least now, it might lose its power later if there's a coup or something, but at least now they do have some level of a bottom, it is seeming. There's a lot of skepticism of RFK in these places, and same with Tulsi Gabbard, who would help connect us into more of a Russian and Chinese alliance, which Mitch McConnell and several other people have finally been standing up when it comes to those kinds of overtures made by Trump. And so that's much better. My own personal experience with RFK and his mendacity, and this is why I have sympathy for people that voted for Trump. Like, in general, and I'm a work in progress, but my goal is to make this channel a safe space for people that voted for Trump and that for whatever reason that had some desire, whether it was because they sincerely wanted to make this country better and fix our problems, or because they were in despair. Whatever the reason is, I legitimately do want to make this channel a safe space for people that voted for Trump. When RFK Jr. voted for president, ran for president, sorry. When RFK Jr. ran for president, he ran on kind of a permaculture, old left, environmentalist, socially conservative platform. He ran on basically in a lot of ways, the American Solidarity platform that I wanted to support. And I don't know, you're welcome to follow me and give me advice if you're in that space. I am closest to the people of the American Solidarity Party. But he ran on that kind of a platform, and I assumed, based on what he was saying, he did seem like more of a grassroots candidate. I assumed that he would be willing to back off on the anti-vax stuff if he was actually the president of the United States. That's what I assumed about him, because he did say publicly in many places that he was not antagonistic to all vaccines. And now I know that this is a lie. Now I know that that's a lie, but I wanted to believe it. And this is as someone that has experience, that's been to this rodeo before, that has understood for years the contortions that Trump voters have put themselves through in order to justify his behavior. I get that. But I still fell for it for a time until he endorsed Trump, and I broke with him at that point. But I am not immune to this either, and so I do want to. And one of the main reasons why I was able to get away from him, I do have a more well-formed ideology than a lot of the people that voted for Trump, even though I think a lot of them are in a similar direction as me. And I also had other things, including a third party, that I could latch onto. And I think a lot of the reason why people have continued to vote for and believe in Trump, despite everything that he's done, is because if they got rid of him, it would leave a hole in their heart. And we haven't provided anything that could fill that hole yet. I think that the policies and the platform of the American Solidarity Party, I obviously don't endorse third parties right now because of the razor-thin margins that we're on in terms of being able to make it to the next election without a coup or something like that. I think that everything we do does matter, but I think that the platform of the American Solidarity Party should be what the opponents of Trump kind of gather around this time, because we tried the alternative and it failed in this election. But I think that we should gather around that. This is kind of a freebie. I think that we should gather around that platform, and if you look at the people that have won each election since 2008, Obama over McCain, he was the more localist, if you will, candidate. Obama over Romney, definitely the more localist candidate. Trump over Hillary Clinton, Biden over Trump. Remember, Trump is not some avatar of localism. He is somebody that cheats on his partners. He is someone that he was a reality TV star. He is not this avatar of localism. And then Trump won over Harris for the same reasons that he won over Clinton. And so I think that if we want to win, especially in the kind of a landslide that we need to be able to quickly undo the damage of Trumpism and get back on track, which is what's absolutely necessary. Like, we can't have 100-year legacy of this. Man wouldn't make it. But I think that a platform like that could fill the hole in the heart. And Bernie Sanders came close to it in his first campaign, which is why he did so well. There really had to be a lot of funny business for him to lose. But I think that if we were to provide that platform as the opponents of Trump, which you could say the Democratic Party, whoever the opponents of Trump are, if we can provide that as our platform, it would really help to fill up their hearts and make them willing to leave. And so that's kind of a freebie of strategy there, long-term strategy. I will talk a lot more about this when I read my paper on this channel, but that's kind of a preview of what I'm going to be getting to later. So the final thing that I'm going to mention, and I'm going to put a link down in the description to this Jacobin article that described this. This is a quote that I'm going to do from the man himself, from Trump himself. Actually, it's not. It's a quote from the article. But the article writes, "There's little chance of that," referring to, like, Worcester v. That 1835 case. Worcester v. U.S., where Andrew Jackson blatantly disregarded the Supreme Court. He said, "There's little chance of that. Trump himself has said it will be up to the courts. Not exactly how a dictator talks." I think that he was sincere when he said that he wanted to be a dictator. I really do. I don't think that this was hyperbole. But what I think that that's a sign of is the profound cognitive weakness that he has, and that is something that we can work with and that will help us in a lot of ways. And so, yeah, I do think that we can survive this. Again, the one nominee that's gotten through so far out of the most dangerous two of them, Kash Patel and Hegseth, the one that has gone through so far is the one that is more incompetent of the two. And he's still going to damage the military a lot, but the question is whether he will damage the country with the military. And there's a chance that he might be too incompetent to do that. We, whether the Republican Senate or just the American people in general, we have not been focused. We have not listened. We voted for this man in the first place. We obviously don't deserve to survive. That's something that I've believed for a long time. We don't have to settle for what we deserve. But as far as what we deserve, I don't think that we deserve to survive. That's old news to me. That's not new. But we might anyway, and that's great. And that's something that we should all get on one side of and push. The main thing that we should all be focusing on, don't get distracted by the 24-hour news cycle. The nominees are what matter. Threats to the rule of law itself are what matters. What federal employees do. By the way, when it comes to Hegseth, I forgot to mention this. The Hegseth, ever since Hegseth has gotten in, and ever since the purges have begun, which they've begun somewhat slower than I expected, ever since the purges of generals have begun, I have heard from anonymous sources that there's a lot of resentment among the enlisted folk about what has been going on at the Pentagon. And I welcome that. That could be the source of a lot of civil disobedience. And civil disobedience is among people that have the arms, is the enemy of totalitarianism. So, yes, that is great news. I've heard multiple anonymous reports of this ever since Hegseth has gotten in, even to the hour that people are ready to resist among the enlisted folk, which is what matters. I've heard the other stuff for months among the people that are getting purged now, but this is enlisted people. So the main thing that we should be focusing on is the threats to the rule of law. So targeting of judges that are blocking his orders with paramilitary or the government, violations of the speech and debate clause or the First Amendment. That's what we should focus on. Don't get drawn into this stuff. I'm going to gloss over anything that I think is a waste of your time in the future, and that's how you'll know that I believe that it's a waste of your time and you shouldn't focus on it. That's going to be something I do at the beginning of all of my news videos. Even Midas Touch, they have some good stuff like Legal AF. Don't subscribe to the Midas Touch network. If you listen to them enough, YouTube will recommend you their stuff occasionally. Feel no need to subscribe to anything that is part of the 24-hour news cycle. They are part of it. They do probably dozens of videos a day, just like any of the major networks. They are a better channel, but they're still part of this system and incentivized by it. So even there's a lot of YouTube shows that are like this. Don't subscribe to anything that is 24-hour news that covers like his dumb tweets and stuff like that. That is a waste of your time. And if you're in the federal government, disobey civilly. Do not, especially if you're armed, do not allow yourself to be a tool of breaking the greatness and the things that we have taken for granted in this country for so long. It doesn't matter who the American people voted for. Your oath is to the Constitution. Follow it. And I'm happy to hear you have a lot of company. You're not alone. And so I'm happy to hear about that. God bless all of you. And I hope to see you again next week. Take care.